Hi folks, Lou here, and I'm going to talk about a very old game that nonetheless had a lot interesting in it and some similar games. When I was, say, 11 years or older, but still a kid, I read comic books, and in the comic books were advertisements for a couple of games with large numbers of plastic pieces. I don't remember the name of the company. It may have been Helen of Toy, or it may not. And one was a land game and one was a sea game. Now, I got the sea game, I never got the land game. It was quite clever. It used a Stratego-like method. There were numbers on the bottom of the pieces. And it went further because the pieces looked different according to different classes. So the cruisers looked different than the destroyers. The battleship looked different than the cruisers. The transports looked different. The submarines looked different. So you could tell different classes. But when a destroyer fought a destroyer, you'd reveal the numbers underneath to see who won. And if this number was the same, I think they both died. I do not remember whether the strongest destroyer could tie the weakest cruiser, but I suspect that was the case. I don't think the weakest cruiser the strongest cruiser could defeat the battleship. There was also an aircraft carrier, and it was enormous. It was much larger than the other pieces. The battleship maybe was 3 inches long, and the aircraft carrier was like 6 inches long and covered 4 of the long rectangles that were the movement grid for the game. And the idea behind the game was you set up your pieces, the other player set up their pieces, and whoever got a transport to the other end of the board, which wasn't all that far, first won the game. There were even little tiny airplanes that you could put on the cruisers, which looked like the Long Beach and had a big area for it, and the battleship. And of course, you put them on the aircraft carrier as well, and you could send those out. And I don't recall, they may have used a die for resolution, whereas everything else was deterministic according to the numbers underneath. And, what happened if a submarine attacked a battleship? I suspect the battleship was dead. What happened when a destroyer attacked a submarine? The submarine was dead. I don't recall what happened when cruisers and submarines fought. It may be the submarines killed them. And of course, the submarines could kill the transports. There were like 10 transports. So there were lots of transports, but if you ran out of transports, you couldn't win the game. Now, the principle of having different looking pieces that had numbers underneath is good. Unfortunately, if there's a different number underneath, that means it's a different sculpt. So if you had 5 cruisers, you needed 5 different sculpts. Well, the number of sculpts has a lot to do with the cost of production. So I don't know how practical it is to make a game like that today. As I said, I didn't have the land-based game, and I don't know how that worked, but there were lots and lots of small, I suspect more or less 2D pieces. And by the way, to give you an idea about inflation, my recollection is this game, Convoy Terror, it was also had another name, Task Force, cost $1.05. But back in the 60s, $1.05 was a lot more money than it is today. It's probably more like $5, maybe even more than that. But still, it was taking advantage of cheap plastic and presumably selling an awful lot of these games. I still have most of the pieces for that game, for what it's worth. There was an attempted revival here. The new Helen of Toy company made the land-based game, but they didn't get enough business and it failed in the end, so they never got to the sea-based game. But I remember that as a very clever game that probably didn't get into the notions of war games, but of course, when we're talking the 60s, it was Avalon Hill and not a lot else. Thanks for listening.